What comics did I pick up at my LCS over the big Easter sale? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back, comic book fans. It's Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and in today's video, we're going to go over the books that I picked up at my favorite LCS, Cards, Comics, and Collectibles in Reisterstown, Maryland, over their big Easter weekend sale. Now, this is a sale that they have, this particular sale they have twice a year, once at Thanksgiving, once at Easter. Really deep discounts on everything in the store. Now, although they run discounts throughout the year on just about every weekend on certain things, these are the weekends that they have the big sales on their premium books. Now, it's only 30%, but that's actually pretty good because sometimes they've got some good prices and you can definitely pick up some good keys. I picked up some great ones last Thanksgiving. This is Easter, and if you watched my video a couple episodes ago, you'll know that I had went there early, a week out before Easter, and did a video. I went in there and inspected their books and see what was going to be available, or what might be available for purchase on the Easter weekend sale. So definitely check out that video. And then we'll talk about that a little bit at the end, about the ones I did get and ones I didn't get. But we'll go over the whole haul here, and you'll get a full picture of what I did at this sale. So at 11 o'clock on Good Friday, I ended up being about third in line. I ended up making a beeline right for the books that I had on my list to get. And these were definitely ones that were from that recon video. And I definitely had enough time to go digging through some of the other bins that I didn't go through necessarily everything on that recon visit, but I went through and I found a few other things. So today we're going to go over all the books that I ended up picking up, and we'll talk a little bit about the books that I didn't pick up as well. Now, before we begin, make sure you hit that like button, slap the subscribe, and definitely hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on great content like this each and every week, Mondays and Fridays at 10 a.m. Now, let's get to the books. All right, so the very first book that I ended up picking up was definitely spotlighted in that previous video, and it's not a super giant key, but it is a pretty decent key, and it probably will have some spec coming up pretty soon for the MCU. I picked up this right here. It is a Fantastic Four 211. The condition looks phenomenal, and I see very little in the areas of defect on here. There's no color breaking spine ticks. The corners are sharp, especially with those black in the cover there. And this is a book that features the first appearance of Terrax the Tamer. He eventually becomes a Herald of Galactus in this issue, and what a great character. I especially like when he ended up dying in the issues with the Silver Surfer and Doctor Doom, I believe around issue, 259, 260 in those issues. It just awesome stories. It was an awesome end to that character, but this was his origin and beginnings as the Fantastic Four were in search of a herald for Galactus. They were working with Galactus and searching for his aid and asking for his aid in the fight against the Sphinx. And they were tasked to go find a herald, and they found one of the worst persons that they could actually find. That's what Galactus wanted, somebody who had no morals, that would have no problem finding him worlds to destroy. And unlike, say, the Silver Surfer, who has morals, right? So in this issue, you've got them finding Terrax, and you've got him being transformed into the Herald of Galactus. You've also got this wonderful, the story is by Marv Wolfman, but you've got wonderful John Byrne artwork and Joe Sinnott inking on this. Just absolutely, what a great team. And it's a book that I had as a kid, and it's a book that definitely has some spec value. The 9.8s, if you can pull a 9.8 on this, maybe you'll make a sale if you sell it, like somebody just did. Somebody just bought this back in February on Heritage Auctions for just about $600. And that is not bad. That's really good, actually. And I'm probably going to repeat myself in this video, the prices have come down since last year in 2021. But it's still really good for this, $660. The lowest, if you actually want to go out and buy this right now off of eBay, buy it now, the lowest you're going to find is about $810. So I'm sure there's some negotiation in there as well, but that kind of gives you a range of what it has sold for recently and what's it available for at the current time, currently. So even a 9.6 on this. Now, if I think we got a 9.8 candidate here, but even if I pulled a 9.6, there's definitely still some money, some meat on the bone, as we say. $150 just went here just a few days ago at the end of March on eBay. That's not great, but if you actually wanted to go right now and buy this off of eBay, the lowest you're going to find a 9.6 for is about $205. So that's not too bad. That's not telling you what it's going to eventually sell for, but that's telling you what it's available for currently. The second book on the list was one that I never had as a kid. I had some of the issues after that. I think I had issue 2 definitely, and a few issues early on. Didn't have a lot of them, but it is a Bronze Age classic, and we just saw the movie with this character come out, the second movie there, and I'm talking about Shazam #1. This came out in February 1973, and it's the first Captain Marvel in DC Comics and his first appearance since the Golden Age. And of course, they can only use the original Captain Marvel in an instance like this because at that time Marvel has this trademark. They made their own Captain Marvel, so they really had to go with the Shazam title on this and the branding and everything. Even though they could still call him Captain Marvel, it was in limited use because of the copyright issues with Marvel. But this right here, they had several copies of this. In fact, I probably had at least a half a dozen issue #1s, and I went through all of them, and there was different prices, and it was because the conditions varied from pretty good to fantastic. And I went ahead and got probably the most expensive one there, and I ended up getting this one as the condition. The one I had originally thought was really good. And then I saw this one. This one was actually not in the box. It was actually the one I have filmed when I was doing the recon video. And it's fantastic. It is a beautiful looking book. Definitely another 9.8, 9.6 candidate. And I look forward to getting this one into the shop, pressing it, and seeing what I can get from that. 9.8s, the most recent sale on that went for $700 back in March on eBay. And currently, the lowest you're going to find on eBay for a 9.8 is $777. 9.6s, again, meat on the bone. Recent sale just a couple days ago here in April, sold for $250. So that right there makes me feel really good that I could still drop down to a 9.6. It tells me that even in a 9.4, there's going to be some value in it if I vastly overjudge this book. Now, you can pick up about the same on eBay. 9.6 right now, you can go for about $260. So again, if you want to buy it, that's what you can find it for. One just sold for $250, so it's definitely in that same ballpark and everything. But what a great book. Can't wait to get this one into the shop. The third comic that I ended up picking up, again, this was on my recon video, and I bought this for the condition. There's no spec on this necessarily. It is just a great old comic book, great creator, and the condition's fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to getting this one into the shop. I picked up Dale Comics, Donald Duck, this is issue, which one is this? Number 45. And they had a healthy selection of Donald Duck Dales, Uncle Scrooge Dales, as well as some gold keys and everything. But the conditions on most of the books they're all pretty worn. And I ended up finding this issue of Donald Duck. They had 2 of these. The other one had a lot of wear on it, but this one was super clean and definitely was a little bit more expensive than the other one. But you got to remember, these premium books are running a 30% discount. So the prices that they had on a lot of these were probably a little high, but the 30% discount brought it down into an area where if I get this cleaned and pressed, would probably make out really good if I eventually ended up selling this. Now, I don't have a lot of sales data on this. In fact, I'm not going to give you any because there's virtually none on this. There's very few on the census, and there's definitely not any ones graded in the last 12 years on there. So I can't give you any of that. But what do you have here? You have a high-grade Carl Barks Donald Duck issue right here. And how can you go wrong with that? I mean, that's just a fantastic combination. And you know that if you get a decent high grade on this, this is definitely going to be a valuable book. All right, so that was it for the books that I picked up that I spotlighted in my recon video. We'll go over why I didn't pick up some of the other ones later in the video. But the fourth book I ended up picking up was one that I have targeted before and one that I picked up from Cards, Comics, and Collectibles in the past. And I ended up finding this. It was they had multiples of this copy, this issue, and I've picked up at least one, maybe two over the last year. I even picked up one at the last sale. But I picked this one up right here. It is New Teen Titans #1. I love this issue. It is a really good candidate, but I've seen it before. I've seen this issue before. I try to pick up better copies, and this one's going to need a little bit of work. It's got some smudge and some dirt over here in this white area right in here, and it's going to benefit greatly from a cleaning press. And I'm hoping I'll do better than the last one I got. The last one I ended up getting was, I think it was 9.4. And I think that I'd sent that one into the George Perez signing that they were doing. CGC was doing the signing. It was before, they were trying to get at least one more signing in, I guess. And it was right before George Perez passed away. So I ended up getting it back. I got a disappointing 9.4, and I ended up getting the George Perez label in there, and that was still pretty nice and everything. But I still strive. This is one of those projects. I don't talk about this book very much. I'd probably talk more about issue number 2 and issue number 44, much more. But I would love to get all three of those as 9.8s at some point. I do have 9.6s in all three of those right now, but I strive for 9.8s. So this one right here, again, will benefit from a clean and press. Of course, this is a George Perez, Marv Wolfman fantastic issue. It is the first team appearance as Cyborg, Raven, and Starfire join the team. It's, of course, not the first appearance. That's over in DC Comics Presents. But what a great issue. I grew up with this issue. I had that whole run from issue 1 up until they pretty much ended the title for New Teen Titans. And I just love this. Made the 80s, between this and the X-Men, made the early 80s just a fantastic time for comic books. And if you can pull a 9.8 on something like this, the values on these are still pretty good. They're definitely down from the highs of 2022. But you're talking about the most recent sale I could find was in January on eBay for $280 for a 9.8. So that's really good. The 9.6s, the same happened back in March for about $125. Definitely some meat on the bones. I'm going to stop saying that. I hate that phrase. Boy, I don't know why I'm saying that today. But these prices, again, are what people are getting for this book. The prices are really down. And I think you're going to find some good bargains out there if you guys just keep looking for it. Looking for some of these high-grade graded books, because the prices have come down. The 9.6, as I said, just sold for $125. That's down 28% from the highs of 2022. And it's about the same for the 9.8. So you can definitely find some bargains. I don't think we're going to see these prices stay that low for very long. I feel like we're seeing signs that the economy, at least in the comic book community, is starting to pick up a little bit, but it all remains to be seen. Now, the next two books I ended up picking up, I had overlooked when I was doing my visit a week ago, but they're books, especially the first one, is a book that I have had on my radar for the last year, and if I find it at a fantastic condition and at a really good price, I'm going to go ahead and pick it up because I know how good it can be. It was one that I cleaned and pressed out of my own collection. I ended up selling that book, and of course, what did I do? I turned around and I've bought multiple raw copies since, so I could do the whole thing over again. Here, let me show you what I've got here. I've got issues 33 and 34 of Alpha Flight, and I can barely squeeze it in here. I'm so far off camera. So I'm just going to put I'm going to talk about 33 first, because it is actually the key but it's not quite as valuable as the second issue. Go figure. This right here features the first appearance of Lady Deathstrike, and she is a key figure, and this storyline, including issue 34, which I think is, we'll get to why that one's more important. It has to do with the Wolverine origin, and you get more about his origin with the adamantium, I believe, in issue number 2. So that's part of the key to all of this. That's why number 34 is more valuable. 33 came out in, well, they both came out in 1986, April and May, and it features the same art team. You've got Mike Mignola doing these wonderful covers, and you got Sal Buscema doing the artwork on the insides. And I probably wasn't as much of a fan of Sal's artwork back then, but you do have these wonderful Mike Mignola covers. 9.8, here's the data, guys. 9.8 on this issue right here. Most recent sold for $134, and I think that's pretty close to what I sold mine for. This is down a lot since 2022. July of 22, the last one sold for about $300. So that's more than 50% that this has dropped basically in a year. Still remains to be a really good key. The second issue, though, actually ends up being slightly more valuable. I could find a recent sale of that of about $165, and I think it has more to do with the scarcity. There's less books of issue 34 here being graded. So I think that probably has a little bit to do with it. And I'm running out of room for the books there. But both good books. I've bought and sold issue 33 before, but issue 34 is the first time that I've picked it up. And I know I've got that on my PC. I'll have to pull that one out at some point. But this one has some really good value. Both of them do. And these are books that will end up definitely going into the shop to be cleaned and pressed and sent to CGC at some point. And I doubt they're not definitely books that I want to keep, but books that will be available to people who want to buy them and add to their PCs. There's definitely some big Alpha Flight fans out there. And I think there's definitely some spec on this book, not just because of the Wolverine origin part of it, but because of Alpha Flight in general. We'll get around to this in the DCU. Wow, I just said the DCU. The MCU at some point, I'm sure. So the remaining books that I ended up picking up are not big books at all. These are all small books. And part of the modern books that I got from Cards, Comics, and Collectible, this part, it was a 70% discount on these books because they are all just modern books and not really major keys or premium books to speak of. But I ended up getting every one of these for a specific reason, and it's the same reason. And they're all for signings for artists and creators coming up over the next year. Well, at least part of this year. And let me go through those books real quick here. And we're not going to get into values. I'll just talk about the books a little bit and why I chose these as potential candidates to get signed. First book up is Fantastic Four 348. And I bought this because it is a classic Art Adams cover, and he is going to be at the Baltimore Comic-Con this year in September. And if you watched the previous video, you saw that I had some Art Adams in there as well, and I'm slowly putting together a small batch of books for various artists, but Art Adams in particular, and I'm trying to find some of his classic covers. And this right here, this is a minor key. It's, I guess, it's the first appearance of the new Fantastic Four. You've got the Gray Hulk, Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Ghost Rider. Just a great cover. He does the art on the inside. And as I was looking this up, I didn't realize that Walt Simonson actually wrote this as well. And who did the inking? Al Milgrom. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. All of them are going to be at the Baltimore Comic-Con this year. And while this originally was just going to be an Art Adams signing, I think this is going to be an interesting challenge to get this book signed by all three creators. And I may go ahead and get this graded as a project piece at this point. I don't see a lot of sales on something like this. I ended up finding one PDX, I think it's PDX, is that right? Is that the name of the company? I have no idea. That has all three of them signed, and I don't have any comps from CGC at all. But this is a book that I think would make for a good video project to show an episode to show a little bit of this process that I go through, that you have to go through when you go to a con. It will become somewhat of a challenge. I can't wait to try this though. But this is a great book. I will probably pick up a couple more of this book over the next few months, just so I can make sure I've got an immaculate copy for them to sign. The next book I ended up picking up, I got 2 copies of, and it wasn't even on my radar. I guess you really couldn't even consider that it's a classic cover, but it's also by Art Adams. But I remember getting this series. I've got this. I just happened to pick it up because, as I said, these were 70% off their prices from the store. But I picked up 2 copies of this. This is Classic I was going to say Classic X-Men. This is Classic Avengers #1. And you've got this wonderful cover here by Art Adams, which most of the members of the Avengers. And I'm like, wow, this is really good. This is cool. And I just stumbled across this as I'm digging through bins and looking at things. I wasn't looking for anything in particular at this point, but I was in the Avengers boxes and I found this. And then I remember he did most of the covers to the Classic Avengers for as long as it ran. And I kind of went through all the other covers to see if there's any other ones that I would really like, but all of them didn't strike me as much as this one right there. So I'm not saying that this is a book that's going to end up getting signed. There's definitely no spec on this. There's not a lot of value if you get this graded by CGC or anything. I think this is just one I'm probably just get signed and hold in the PC just for the PC and for the experience. But what a great piece of artwork there. And the next book I ended up picking up was one for Alex Ross. And this one right here struck me. It was in that same box as those Classic Avengers. They had the Avengers Invaders mini, I guess it would be a maxi series. It was 12 issues. And I remember having the first couple issues of this, but I didn't really particularly like the artwork on the inside. But the covers are all by Alex Ross, and they were fantastic. I mean, there's always something really cool about the Avengers meeting the Invaders because Cap is on both teams. Technically, Namor was on both teams, and well, if you really want to get down to it, wasn't the original Human Torch at least partially with the West Coast Avengers at one point? It's kind of cool. And what you've got here is this is issue number 12. You've got this great cover, Cap's right in front, and you've got new X-Men, new Avengers, and the Invaders mixed in here. And that's just really cool. It would have been a candidate for the Alex Ross signing if I had sent this out, or if I'd gotten this, say, a week or 2 weeks ago. I had already sent out my order to Alex Ross, and it was a pretty hefty order. I think I've got 8 to 9 books in there. It was already pretty expensive. So this is a book that I'll hold in my PC, and we'll wait for another Alex Ross signing down the road. Can't say if this will be one that will go in, but what a beautiful cover here. Honestly, I'd rather have this as a print to put on the wall than I would as a comic. I didn't find a lot of value in this book out there. I didn't see a lot of them being graded, but then again, Alex Ross has got so much artwork. Who can say what's really worth getting graded just for its own sake? Because he has so many different things. And this is a book that I couldn't find a lot of value in graded or anything, but I just think it's a wonderful illustration. All right, so the 4th book I ended up picking up is one that falls into that category of I sold it. I got it graded out on my PC, and I sold it because it was hot. And that was this issue right here. It is Walking Dead number 193. This is the last issue. This was the surprise. Guess what, guys? We're not doing the book anymore. The book's ending issue. And this is for a signing at CGC later in the year for Charlie Adlard. I think I'm pronouncing it right. If I didn't pronounce that right, guys, let me know. And I've got a lot of Walking Dead. I didn't really get into the book until about issue 100, but I've gone back and I've picked up a few issues here and there. I don't have a lot of interest in going back and collecting all of those at this point, but I definitely would have liked to get a signature and maybe something signed by this artist. And I was going, well, what books do I want to pull out that actually means something out of the ones that I have without having to go back and buy old back issues or anything like that? And I remember I sold this last year right when it was hot. This book was really hot. And again, here I go. I put it back in my collection again. So I thought especially with this big open area, it'd be a nice place to have him sign. I don't know if he's doing remarks or not. I'll have to check on that. Sometimes that is very limited what's available that you can get there, but this would make a great book to get a remark on. But at the very least, it's in the pile that I'm going to keep put together to send to his signing, to at least get it signed. We'll see about the remark, but I haven't decided on what books I'm going to send, but this is definitely a candidate. All right, so the next books I ended up picking up, and let me move these out of the way. I picked up a couple of first issues of Blue Book, and I think I've got 2 of that issue. These are issues number 1, and then there's this cover as well. And this is a brand new book. It's just been out in the last month or so, and it's by James Tynion. And only reason I ended up picking up more of these. Now, I've got one copy someplace that's buried in the boxes that I need to go through from all the new books I've been getting. I pulled this because Third Eye Comics in Annapolis, Maryland is having yet another James Tynion signing. And while I may still bring mostly Something Sealed Children or Department of Truth books, I try to get his other books, at least the first issues, signed as well. I'll definitely get one of these signed, if not 2. I will probably try. I know the last time I ended up getting The Closet signed, the first issue of that, and he had some other new issues. And he's also it's a new release of his new Image comic. I believe it's World Tree. I think that's right. And I definitely will pick up a copy of that to get signed. But I wanted to pick up a copy of this to get it signed as well. I don't know what necessarily will get picked up and produced out of the James Tynion library. We know that Something's Killing Children is coming along, and I'm sure just about every one of his books are going to get picked up along the way. So I'd like to get something signed from everything he does, and definitely that's why I picked these books up. And then the last book that I ended up getting for a future signing was this one right here. It is X Factor number 13, and it's got this one of my favorite X Factor covers by Walt Simonson. And I don't know if I'm going to get this graded. I probably will, because this will be a double signature because Louise ended up writing the book. So I think this might be another CGC candidate. They're both going to be in Baltimore in September. So I think that's going to be another project for those 3 days that I'm going to be there, to be able to get both of them. That'll be a little bit easier than that Fantastic Four book, but it's still going to be pretty cool. It was always one of my favorite issues of X Factor. I love them all, actually. And I've gotten so many of these signed by both the Simonsons, but we're talking 20 years ago when they were living in the Baltimore, Washington area. They would show up at these Serendipity small comic shows, and I remember getting tons of these X Factor books signed, but at the time, they used to sign the books on the splash page. You open it up, you got a splash page with all the credits, and that's where the artists and writers would sign. And I'm pretty sure this one's in the PC. I didn't have many of these signed on the cover. In fact, I don't know if any of these X Factors I've got have been signed on the cover, but I probably will go back and pull some of those, because usually Walt's really good about signing comics, and he doesn't charge. And that may change. I don't know. I know down in Charlotte, he was not charging for signing books, and that was one of the reasons the line took so long down there. So I may end up definitely this issue, but I may pick up a few other ones just to add to that signing. I know the issues in 23, 24, 25, somewhere in there, there's 3 of them that interconnect. If you lay them all out together, they all go together as one giant illustration. I may end up trying to get all 3 of those done on the cover as well. But for now, I'm real happy about picking this issue up with the Dark Phoenix and Walt Simonson. It's a great combination. It's one of my favorite covers. So that's it for what I picked up at Cards, Comics, and Collectibles over their big Easter sale. But some of you may be wondering, if you watched my recon video, why didn't I pick up some of those other big keys? There was an X-Men 101 in there that was particularly nice. But I'll tell you why I passed on that. And I've had people comment on the other video, that's the book. Go get that book. Well, why I didn't pick the book up was the price. The price for the condition I felt was overpriced, and for what I felt like the book was going to eventually grade out to. And I think at $700, and that is after the discount. That is the discount. So it's a $1,000 book. So at 30% off, that's $700. $700 for that book felt more like it would have graded out to a book if you got it. That's what it would cost graded. It was a graded price, not a raw price. So I ended up passing on that book at this time. And it's what's funny is you go back a year. I did this, well, a year, 6 months ago, back in Thanksgiving. That book was still there. That book hasn't moved in all this time. It's still practically in the same place on the stand, but I just felt like the price needs to come down a lot. I wouldn't mind spending $300-400. Don't tell my wife that I don't mind spending that much sometimes, but I wouldn't mind spending that on it. And I might have been tempted if it had been in that $350 to $400, $450 range. Anything above that, I'm starting to, okay, how much a risk are you taking getting this book, knowing it's got defects, and some of those are going to be pressable, some of them you can get out, some of them are not. The risk, there's a lot of risk in a book like that, and I just felt the condition was warranted not getting it. So that's why I didn't pick that one up. And I was kind of true about the other books that I spotlighted in the recon video, but still didn't pick up. They were good books, and the prices were a lot less on all the other books, but I just didn't feel like they were, any of those at the conditions were necessarily going to grade out to what I wanted. So I passed on a lot of stuff, but I ended up picking up some really good things I felt were at good prices and definitely have some value when you get them cleaned and pressed. Most of these books, as I said, are going to be sent to CGC in hopes of getting that high grade. And here I go again, guys. I'm trying to take books that are low, medium-sized keys, get them cleaned and pressed, get them in the most perfect condition I can get them in the CGC, and try to add value to them. And that's a case of add value to them, but add that to my PC, or they're going to be for sale. It's either or. It's fine in either place, because if I keep it, it's going to be part of the PC. My daughter will eventually get it, and she can sell it at that point. But also, they're going to be for sale. And as I've always talked about and others talk about, we do this. A lot of these books, they're not necessarily something I want to keep in my PC, but I do it to sell to help pay for this hobby. So that was a lot of that. That's where we went with this one. That's where we ended up going on this trip. I didn't find anything that was necessarily on my list, my 2003 list. I didn't stay disciplined like I probably should have, but still, nonetheless, I ended up picking up some really nice books. Now, they also had some really nice Silver Age keys in their display case at the register. And last Thanksgiving, that same case had many more books. They haven't restocked quite as much. And I remember last time they had a lot of the John Byrne X-Men, and this time they had 0 of them, but they did have some nice Green Lanterns, and they definitely had some really old Spider-Man. And you might ask, well, why weren't those on your list? Well, those aren't my list right now because there just aren't. My interest is someplace else. They may be down the road at some point, and I probably will regret not picking up some of those keys. I know like the first cover appearance of Sinestro was in those Green Lanterns right there. But you can't get everything all the time, so you got to pick and choose sometimes. And right now, as I said, I'm trying to stay disciplined. If I'm not going to be disciplined and I'm going to go back and get them graded for resale, then sometimes I'm not going to put a lot of money into the books. I'm going to try to be conservative about what I pick up in situations like this. And that's what I did here. I think overall, I spent a couple $100 between everything. It was still a really good deal between the 30% discount on the premiums and the 70% on the lesser books. And it's a case of, I think I'm going to come out really far ahead in the end when I get everything cleaned and pressed and then graded. So that's it for today. Please leave me a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about the books that I ended up picking up. And if you're ever interested in any of the books that I have on my channel, reach out to me on Instagram. Check out my eBay store or my Shortbox store. Definitely check those out. I've got some great slabs on there, and we can definitely work out a deal, especially if you DM me on Instagram. Thank you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hope you got a lot out of it. And definitely join me on Friday as we go over some great key comics that I've picked up from Heritage Auctions and maybe a couple other sources, but mostly Heritage, and we'll go over those at that time. I'll see you on Friday, and remember, guys, every comic has a story.